The Knicks had over 30.
We've just hit a milestone of over 18,000 subscribers on PowerPlay, a video podcast that travels the world to explore the hard truths of the energy transition. I'm short on time this week because I'm attending a wedding on the East Coast, and I'm also spending a lot of time preparing for future episodes in Europe this summer, so I've decided to call this the end of Season 1 of PowerPlay. With so many new faces joining us, and with my time a bit limited this week, I've decided to make episode 16 a quick 10-minute recap of the highlights from our first 15 episodes. After the recap, I'll also give you a preview of the episodes I'm planning for Europe, with the first episode of PowerPlay Season 2 scheduled for July 22nd, 2024. So let's go. In episodes 14 and 15, we've been focused on the historical benefits of fossil fuels and the future predictions of climate science, emphasizing the need for probabilistic thinking to understand climate science. I made an attempt to acknowledge the many benefits of fossil fuels, while also making a case for the need for their rapid replacement with zero-carbon alternatives. Replacing fossil fuels in the energy sector is one of the most ambitious tasks humanity has ever set for itself, and to understand how it's possible, it's essential to add exponential thinking to our probabilistic thinking. We need to recognize that every facet of the energy transition is experiencing exponential growth. Wind and solar, our primary sources of renewable energy for the future, are scaling at a pace that's on track to overtake fossil fuels within the next 2 decades. And if you don't believe me, you need to watch episode 8. However, the intermittent nature of wind and solar power means that we need to match them with energy storage of all durations to truly replace fossil fuels in the power sector. The good news? Energy storage, particularly lithium-ion batteries, is already growing at an exponential pace, and projects like the 300 gigawatt-hour green hydrogen energy storage project in Delta, Utah, are launching long-duration energy storage at massive scale, as we discussed in episode 7. Speaking of lithium-ion batteries, their dramatic drop in cost and their performance improvement is powering another transformation, the global rise of electric vehicles, which are also experiencing exponential growth that positions them to replace internal combustion engine passenger vehicles. But as we enter this period of rapid exponential growth, one of the hard truths we've discovered is that Chinese companies have emerged as key players in supplying the hardware of the energy transition, dominating the PV solar and lithium-ion supply chains and rapidly positioning themselves as leaders in the electric vehicle market. So how are Chinese companies doing this? Well, one reason is that Chinese central planners have allowed these companies to move much faster than their Western competitors. In the West, permitting delays, interconnect queues, and local opposition are major roadblocks slowing down progress in building new factories and energy transition projects. However, as we saw in episode 6, there are pockets of hope in the West, like Texas, showing that rapid progress in the energy transition is possible. On the other hand, California, an early leader in the energy transition that suffers some of the most challenging permitting processes, interconnect queues, and local opposition to energy transition projects, is now becoming an energy transition laggard as exponential growth overwhelms their existing processes. If we don't address these speed killers soon in the West, we risk ceding the future to competitors abroad and failing to beat the clock on climate change. As exponential growth of renewables continues and we set our sights on replacing fossil fuels, we have to anticipate that projects are getting exponentially larger, and we will soon need to be able to transmit tens and even hundreds of gigawatts of electrical energy from places of production to places of consumption, just like we do today with fossil fuel energy. So we explored the Permian Basin in Texas in episode 11, the most prolific oil field in the United States, and how the oil and gas industry put in place the equivalent of 450 gigawatts of capacity. What we explored in episode 12 was an alternative to transmitting electricity with wires, instead using green hydrogen pipelines. Having made the case that exponential growth of renewables, combined with exponential growth of energy storage of all durations, would allow us to decarbonize the power grid, we then made the case that in parallel, we have to pursue the electrification of everything. This would allow us to replace fossil fuels that today power transportation, industry, and many other things. To take a look at this in some detail, we took a deep dive investigating electrification of lawn care. So that's the Cliff Notes version. Whether you've been with us since day one or just hopped on board, you're now up to speed. So far, we've been to 4 cities in China and 4 cities in the United States, and we've spent a fair amount of time contrasting the top-down communist central planning system in China to the bottoms-up democratic and capitalist planning of the United States. In Season 2, we'll be setting our sights on the European Union, where coalition governments are common, and in addition to having parties similar to the U.S.'s right and left, they often include parties with socialist or social democratic platforms, driving Europeans toward greater regulation, social contracts for medical care and education, and less income disparity. My family and I lived in Europe 3 brief times during my career, and I did a lot of business there. My wife and I plan to spend almost 3 months in Europe this summer, so we'll have time to take a deep dive. Here's what we're going to take a look at. In addition to making Power Play episodes, I'm also going to be on vacation, and I'm a wine lover, so while my ultramarathon wife spends a week running in the Alps with friends, my first stops in Europe will be Bordeaux and Rioja, where we'll be exploring the impact of climate change on winemaking and steps that winemakers are taking to reduce carbon emissions and adapt to climate change. Then my wife and I will head to Norway together for 10 days, where we're renting an electric vehicle and driving it from one hiking destination to another to see what electric vehicle use is like in a country that's already made the transition to electric vehicles. And then we're boarding a cruise ship that will stop in Iceland to explore geothermal power and in Greenland to see the Greenland ice sheet firsthand and explore the implications of its melting. After Greenland, we'll return to Amsterdam, and then we'll be spending a few weeks in Tuscany. And to be honest, I haven't figured out yet what topics we'll cover there. On the way home, we're going to stop at the opening day of Oktoberfest and also stop to visit friends in Malaga, Spain. So, we've made it to the end of Season 1. I'm going to take a break now for a few weeks as my wife and I prepare to head to Europe. So get ready for Season 2, Episode 1 on Monday, July 22nd. And now, as we wrap up this episode and this season, here are some of my favorite images from Season 1. Let's go.